What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, and Kevin for all their support. And if you want to join those fine folks and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. That's less than $1 an episode. And if you do that, you'll get some sweet, sweet perks for your support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So as a designer out there looking for work, maybe you're looking for work, maybe you're not. Maybe you want to be a freelancer. Maybe you've been just racking your brain trying to figure out how to make this freelancing gig work. You might be charging by the hour. And you might realize, I can only work so many hours before I make any money. Well, I've got my good buddy, Philip. I'm going to try it. Wallage? I can't say it. You Dutch people and your names. I've got my buddy, Philip. We're just going to say Philip. We're first name only here. I got my good buddy, Philip, on the show. And he's going to talk today about how to productize your freelance career so that you don't have to worry about charging all those hours. I'm really excited to have Philip on the show. Where's your bio? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So Philip is a dedicated advocate for creative freelancers, providing practical solutions and support to overcome challenges in building and sustaining successful businesses. With firsthand industry experience, Philip understands the unique struggles faced by freelancers who are passionate about their work but overwhelmed by entrepreneurship. Through his expertise, he helps freelancers navigate complexities while maintaining their creative focus, and Philip's step-by-step approach helps freelancers develop compelling offerings, leverage their strengths, and achieve their goals for a thriving and sustainable career. Philip, welcome to Beyond UX Design, man. I am so excited to have you. How's it going?
Wow, thank you so much. I'm just going to pause for 1 second. At the end of the day, these beautiful window tiles open up, which is a bit loud, so they're done now, but... Okay, here we are. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. We've been going back and forth for a while and very much been looking forward to it. So happy that we're finally making it happen.
Absolutely, man. Well, I am super stoked. So one of the things I'm really intrigued about is this idea that you've come up with. And it's all about productizing your freelance gig. And I used to do freelance a long time ago. I'll be honest, burnt out pretty quickly. My wife and I did this for a couple years. She actually did it full time. And I was doing it with her, but all the money was going to her. So we made a little bit of money, but it was enough for her to do that full time. But I was still working 2 jobs essentially. It got really hard, right? You can only work so much. So before we talk about that, tell me how you found out about this idea of productizing. You got a nice little resume going on. You've done a lot of stuff. You worked in corporate IT. You've done all that stuff. You're doing freelance. Tell me a little bit about you, your background, and how'd you ultimately find out about this idea of productizing freelance?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you said, it's been one hell of a ride. I've been in the digital design game for over 18 years, either in one form or another. To keep the story kind of compact, I started out running a web design agency just when I turned 18. I ran it for 7 years. We grew to 4 people, but really didn't get nowhere. We were selling small websites to small, medium businesses, mostly small. And that came with its disadvantages. And I think whenever you're starting out and you're trying to hustle or you're trying to build your business, you'll definitely recognize the complaint, like it shouldn't cost too much. It shouldn't be too overthought. We just need a simple website. And yeah, doing that after a while, at some point when we were with 4 people, we had to deliver 4 websites a month, which is totally impossible, of course. Mm-hmm. So we were working on a model that wasn't working. Unfortunately, that led, of course, to a breakup after 7 years. We didn't really have the business insight of how to escape that trap. And I switched to freelancing. So instead of working on a project basis for clients, I decided to work on an hourly basis and working 32, 36, 40 hours a week and making more than we normally did with 4 people.
That's awesome.
I thought that was a dream come true. But I did find out that that definitely came with some downsides. And just like you mentioned in your intro, I also ran into a burnout. Everything was on site. I had a daily commute of 2 hours to get to Amsterdam and two
Oh, good
hours to
Lord.
get back home. After doing that for half a year, 4 days a week, I burned out as well. And it was pre-COVID, and I said to myself, if only something would happen that would allow us all to work from home. So
Oh,
really
no.
sorry about that, but that kind of...
It's you. You did it.
Yeah,
You
it
jinxed
was
us.
me. Yeah, but that kind of got the ball rolling. So that was definitely a pivotal moment in my I don't like the word journey, but there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, when people think about freelancing, right, they think about charging by the hour. So that's kind of the standard freelance rate, or freelance, income stream is the hourly rate. I need a website that's going to cost you 100 hours and I charge $100 an hour. So that's, whatever. I'm not good at math. Was that $10,000? Was that? I don't even, I'm not good at math. But yeah, so that's why I'm a designer. I don't know how to count. So, when we think about that, that's sort of the basis. And then, what happens when you start to do that? What's the problem with doing that from your perspective?
Yeah, it comes with a few difficulties. And at some point, it's also kind of weird why we even think of it being the standard, right? I mean, if you call a plumber or you need something done around the house or you're buying a car, you're not asking how many hours did it take to build this car. You want to know what something cost. But the thing when it comes to working on an hourly basis, it works kind of counterintuitively. And I know, for example, your audience, there are a lot of designers out there who might be in love with Figma. Now that we got rid of Sketch and all the other Adobe crap.
We're still using Sketch at work. So
No. Okay.
I know. It's terrible, but
I'm not a shareholder. It's fine. But you invest in your skills, and you might be building up design systems that you can reuse. You might have your own typography system that you can copy paste, or maybe even some set of predefined colors that are perfect for UI. So you invest a lot of time in your skills. You build your expertise. So you're really working towards a point where you can work as effective, in other words, fast as possible. Mm-hmm. But what happens if you charge an hourly rate? You're able to work faster than someone who just started. So should you earn less? That doesn't really add up, right? And at the same time, you're able to deliver faster. So imagine there's a company who says, well, we have this new marketing campaign, or we rebranded our entire company. We need something really fast. And you're able to deliver something really good in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't it be worth more?
Right.
So there's kind of a tricky thing. Plus, you also put in a lot of risk at the client side, because the client will probably ask you, oh, this looks great, but we want something improved. We want some changes. And you'll have to say, well, that's fine, but it'll cost you more. Uh-huh. And that's not really great for the relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I've run, that's exactly the kind of stuff that we ran into. It's like, just like you said, just because I can do this faster, should I make less money? Well, then, you charge more an hour. And then when you charge more an hour, you tell the customers that and they get sticker shock and like, oh my God, 125, 150 an hour. I don't know. So that's the kind of stuff we always struggled with. And towards the end, when my wife and I were doing, we did start to move to a firm fixed price where, we took what we thought our average hourly estimate would be, multiplied that by what we wanted our hourly rate to be, and said, this is the price. We finish less time, we make more money. We finish more time, it takes us more time, we make a little less that route. And the idea is that, it all averages out. But it took us a long time to get to that point. And, one of the things that was kind of interesting with this, we would get clients, and maybe this is the kind of clients we had, I don't know, but they would always try to nickel and dime us, and this is, again, one of the things that like we got burnt out with. And so what we started to do would put on our estimates, or on our, when they would ask us for a thing, and we did an RFP or something, on the estimate we would put, the cost, and then break down the hourly rate, and then how we got to that number. And over time, we're just like, why are we doing that? Stop doing that. Like, just put it's just $10,000. That's what it costs. You don't like it, go find somebody else. And I don't know. That was kind of a struggle for us. I don't know. Have you ever run into that kind of thing? I'm curious
for sure.
When clients kind of do that. Yeah.
Yeah, those things have a lot of angles, right? Because on the one hand, you're selling something that other people sell as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you will immediately be compared with someone else who, in the client's eyes, does the same thing. So you also want to make sure that why should they go with you? What makes you better? What makes you unique? Why should it be okay for it to cost more at what you're doing?
Right.
So that's definitely one of the things to keep in mind. And I think one of the stories that kind of bubbles up with me when we're talking about it is that there was like this big server crash at a company before everything was cloud hosted. So everything was running internally and the entire system fell on its ass. So the entire company couldn't work. And they had to call in this like one super specialized IT guy, came in, pressed a few buttons and it was solved. And he sent an invoice of like 5,000-6,000 euros. And the company was like, why should it be so much? You just came in, it wasn't even 5 minutes. And he made his invoice as 20 clicks, like €5, knowing exactly where to click. And that was like the rest of the invoice. Yeah. And in a way that still holds true.
I love it.
One other thing that I would really like to bring up on this topic as well is that you're also limiting your earning potential. Mm-hmm. So when you're working on an hourly rate, you only should work 40 hours billable at the most. And that's a lot because who is working 40 hours a week and always working on client work? You have your administration, your paperwork, your email, your so many things around you as well. But that would mean you have a glass ceiling of your hourly rate times the amount of hours that you can bill. And yeah, it's not very scalable. So at some point, what does that mean? Do you want to keep working every hour of the week to make the same amount of money? Or do you want to build something that is scalable, something that will allow you to increase your income? And I don't want to head into the direction of, I quit my education and moved to Bali and now I'm drop shipping, making 25 grand a week. Nothing like that. But the idea of getting further with your business, that's a challenge on an hourly rate.
Yeah, you bring up a really great point too, because when you think about charging an hourly rate, I'm not good at math, so I'm gonna screw this up. But let's say you charge $100 an hour, and you make 40 hours a week billable, or so 40 times 100, 4,000 a week times 52. What is that? I'm not good at something like that. It's a lot of money. But when you think about what you just said, you're not billing 40 hours a week, so you're not making $4,000 a week, right? You've got to do all that other stuff that comes along with running your business, like bookkeeping, invoicing, sales, maybe RFPs, constantly, finding new people to give you money so that you can charge $100 an hour, collections when they don't pay on time, right? So all that stuff adds up and that eats into that billable hours. And I think a lot of people think of it just like you said, I'm going to go live on the beach somewhere and just do this, blah, blah, blah. And it's very rarely it works out that way. That was part of why we got burnt out too, was a lot of that. We were doing a lot more of that than we were doing actually the fun stuff.
Yeah, and if I can give you, I think from the financial aspect, I mean, if you do want to run the numbers, one of the examples that I use, because I've been working as a freelance UX designer for the longest time, my hourly rate is around 97 euros an hour for long-term engagements, which I'm getting away from, luckily. When you calculate if you would work 36 hours for a pretty, I would say, high Western European rate, you would invoice around, on average, 18,000 euros a month, because that would be every month's different, weeks, holidays, you name it. So let's say on average you would be able to invoice 18,000 when you are as good as billable full-time. And that's long-term corporate in-house freelance jobs. When you think about something like a design sprint that some UX designers or some of the designers within your audience might know, a design sprint is a 4-day process. It's a very long 2-day workshop. You go into a prototype mode to create something that you can test. And you test it with real users, and then at the end of the week, you have feedback on a possible solution. When you package that up, you're actually talking to a company saying, hey, what is the most valuable and complex problem that you're currently having in your organization that is costing you either a lot of time and a lot of money? What if I would be able to show you a possible solution, and if that works, within 1 week's time? And of course, there's a bit of prep work, there's a lot of reporting. So the entire thing would take a little bit more. You could sell that for 25,000 euros, which is already a lot more than you would be able to bill on a monthly basis. But then the magic with productization, meaning standardizing everything, creating templates, making sure that you have the least amount of time required to get that done, you would be able to run 2 of those a month. And that's when the financial scales change.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to ask, we're going to talk a little bit more about what productizing actually means. You just gave a great example. I want to explore that more. But first, why $97? Why not 100? Or why 97 euros and not 100 euros? Was there a reason why you did 97? I'm really curious.
That's because there are these blood-sucking recruiters between freelancers and the big corporates.
Oh, you got negotiated down. Okay.
But
okay.
When you have these long-term engagements, every euro is one. But at the end of the day, it's a difference between either 18K or 17,800. It's
and it might mean not getting the contract either. So yeah, that's a good point. I was just curious why 97. Okay, so when we talk about productizing, you just gave a really great example of a design sprint. There's probably people are swirling in their head like, well, I think a product, I think ebook, I think T-shirts, I think artwork, I think a physical thing, right? But when you're talking about productizing, we're not talking about that. Tell me what when you talk about productizing, is there a definition? Is there something that you think in your head like this is a product that I can sell? You gave the design sprint example, but what are some others? Is there a definition for that?
Yeah, I don't have the textbook definition, but I think the way that I would yeah, exactly. The way that I would explain it would be, imagine that you're walking down a grocery store. Mm-hmm. You have all these boxes of cornflakes, cereal, and you're seeing the boxes. You see, okay, I see a box of cereal. I see the features. I see the benefits. Maybe a lot of sugar and maybe some weight gain, but you know what you're buying. You know exactly what it is. And especially with designers and design thinking, whenever you have these big, challenging projects now as a designer, it's really hard to even propose a project. It's always this one-of-a-kind, unique approach. Sometimes you do a bit of more research, sometimes you do a little bit of less, some more or less testing, and maybe some iterations as well. But imagine your service being a very clearly described cereal box, saying, hey, you are this person, you're having this problem, and if you buy this product, this is exactly what you'll get, and this is the outcome that you'll have. But on the back end, on your end, you know exactly if they purchase it, this is exactly what needs to happen when it starts and when it's done. Making your services a lot more standardized, meaning easier to deliver, and you can improve over time as well.
Yeah, so I love that idea of a box, walking down the grocery store aisle, picking up a box, reading it, maybe the ingredients, maybe there's, a picture, there's branding, there's all that stuff around it. And you pick it up and like I'm picking up a box of Frosted Flakes versus this, and you can almost like compare 2 boxes. This one has this one has that. Which one do I want? I love that idea. That's a really cool idea. So when you think about productizing something, again, you gave that example. What are some other ways that you could think of? It doesn't have to be an exhaustive list that a designer can productize their offerings versus this hourly rate.
Definitely. So imagine you're a web designer, and of course you would sell websites. But what if you would make it more specific in the product, but also to a target audience? So imagine you might be very interested in the WCAG guidelines, which is the Web Accessibility Guidelines. So anyone with a visual impairment or whatever a website requirement is for everyone to be able to use that website. That is a very specific skill. You want to see who would benefit from that, besides, of course, the people visiting that website. But a lot of government and semi-government organizations, they need to abide to those guidelines because they need that accessibility. But I think if you would compare how many web designers there are versus someone who is specialized in web accessibility and has a off-the-shelf web accessibility audit product, that's when you all of a sudden become one out of 1,000.
I love it. So in this case, you're selling the service essentially of auditing a website, but it's become so standard that it becomes a homogeneous product in essence. So it's sort of a service that you've standardized so clearly that you can sell that thing on its own. Is kind of the idea.
One of the things that you mentioned or that we talked about earlier is being compared to a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
If you go from I build websites to I help government and semi-government organizations with making their digital platforms accessible through my accessibility audit, all of a sudden you know exactly who you're targeting. They will think, well, he only does this, so he must be good at it. He's specialized in
He's the expert,
this service.
Yeah.
And that would also allow you, of course, to charge a premium over having to fight over crumbs.
Yeah, and the other thing too that I was just thinking, if you can position yourself that way, you can start to think about SEO and Google AdWords or keywords or something. If you want to spend money, you could hire a marketing team to market that specifically, versus just that sort of generic. Kind of the same thing we say a lot about your portfolio or anything else. You can make a generic offering and try to appeal to everybody, and you might appeal to no one, or you can appeal to a very niche target, appeal to very few, but have a much higher likelihood that it hits, right? I love that idea. I was just thinking about like when my wife and I used to do this. We didn't really market ourselves this way, but I think this is us, probably just being young and silly. But we
same
ended
here.
up, yeah.
Same here. If only I had known this 10, 20 years ago. But
if only I think
that's part of the reason why I'm so excited about it. Because for me, this took years to figure out and come to a point where I realized, like, why isn't my company working? Am I not working hard enough and I'm not doing enough outreach? Or what's going wrong? Why am I not getting where I want to go? And these really have been light bulb moments from my own experience. And that's the reason why I'm so excited about it, because I really want to share this, because I think it will make a lot of people's lives a lot easier, because we need to simplify our business instead of, and I also do social media ads. Do less, make it more specific.
You gotta do everything.
Make your business simpler and easier, and you'll have a lot more fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just thinking about like when my wife and I would do this back in the day. We would do websites was one of our big things. I was a front end developer, UX designer. She was the sort of designer, product manager, project manager kind of thing. And what we would do is, this is so long ago, we would do WordPress websites. So we had a WordPress theme that we customized, right? It was like a white label theme essentially. And that's what we started every single project off of. And whenever someone wanted a new feature, if it wasn't included in the package, we would charge them some fee to customize the template. And then we would use that feature as an offering later. So every new customer would get that new feature. And I was just thinking about this, like we were kind of starting to do it, but we didn't really do it. But we had this sort of product of a website, and we had a basis, and we had a layout already made, and it ended up just becoming, more than changing colors and things like that, logos and stuff, changing fonts. The websites all look unique in a way. But we had that product. We weren't exactly where you're at, I don't think, but I was just thinking back and I'm like, wait, we were almost sort of doing this. What happened? But we didn't market it, though. I think that was the big thing. We didn't market it as a product. We just sort of use it as an internal tool.
If you really want to knock it out of the park, and hopefully this might be a bit of a golden nugget for the listeners as well, if you're selling websites and you've invested in your library, and I'm just going to call it library, and people will hopefully get what I mean by that, you've invested a lot of time in working as fast as possible. And you can always try to look for your own clients, meaning working directly with the end client for yourself. But larger digital agencies, and I'm talking about agencies with over 40, 50 people, they are no longer able to do websites under 15, 20,000 euros a pop. So if you're selling websites for 2, 3, or 4,000 euros, start marketing towards digital agencies.
Yeah.
Because they actually get clients who have a budget of 10,000 who they are not able to help. So if you're able to then say, hey, I can help you with a website of 8,000, you get to keep 2,000 yourself, all of a sudden you have a stream of clients coming in.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you are delivering fast-paced websites for full-service marketing agencies.
Right. Now, when people think about freelance, I think maybe this is just me, maybe I have a bias because this is how I did it. But when I think about freelance, what I think about is, going out, finding small businesses and doing the work directly for them. I think about going and finding someone who needs a website and selling it to them, or someone who needs an email marketing campaign and selling it to them. I don't really often think about, and maybe this is again why I got burnt out, but I don't think about going to an agency who's as a freelancer. That is something that I hadn't really considered before, to be honest. So that seems like it alleviates a lot of stress there.
There's a lot of possible directions, and I think because I speak with a lot of people who are in the web design industry, and they say, well, how can I productize web design? I sell websites. It's like, of course, but what type of website? Are you really good at landing pages? Do you specialize in community websites? Do you specialize in e-commerce? Or what type of industry or what type of problem? Even though the product doesn't have to be lightning strike, terribly unique, never seen before, you can still angle it in a way that sets you apart from the crowd.
I love that idea, though. Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things, like just going back to what you said before, targeting it, right? And something that you just mentioned that I just want to call out is, like, this doesn't have to be unique and what do you call it, like lightning strike idea that no one's ever seen. It just has to be something someone's willing to pay for. You don't have to be the first person to sell this product. It could just be better than everybody. You could be cheaper than everybody. You could do it faster than everybody. Whatever that value add that you want to market, you just have to convince someone to pay for it. That's really the hard part, maybe.
Well, talking about payments, there's also the angle of having a different payment model. So we talked, of course, about the way cost for a website comes up. So that could be on an hourly rate or a project rate. But there are also agencies coming up now who charge a subscription.
Right.
So they talk about, for example, hey, if you need a website or design services, you can become our client. It'll cost you €4,000 or €5,000 or dollars a month, and you can give us as much work as you want, but there are some strings attached. So there's a lot of ways to stand out from the crowd, I think.
Right. Yeah, I love that idea too of exploring the payment models, and this is again something where a lot of people are just like, well, I'm gonna work 100 hours. I'll send you an invoice for 100 hours at $100 an hour, and then you can pay me when we're done. And the part of the problem with freelance work too is that it's like it ebbs and flows. There's cycles. You might make a ton of money one month and make no money the next month, or very little money the next month, or you might have an invoice that you're expecting and nobody actually pays you, and then you're like, well, I got bills to pay. What am I gonna do? That's something to really think about, right? Like, having that option to pay monthly on a retainer or however a subscription service. Maybe you don't charge full price for a website, but you charge them a few $100s a month, include that hosting and stuff, right? And so that becomes like sort of a subscription. I mean, if they stop paying, the website goes down. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Also on the product front, on the topic of stability, when you talk about, hey, you have a project, it has a beginning and an end. Now what? Even if you're a web designer, you can have more than one service. So for example, when we talk about, hey, I'm a web designer. Oh, so you build websites? Sure. But I also help marketing agencies with SEO audits. I also do accessibility audits. I do this, I do that. There are different things to offer. I don't want to advocate, like, once again, I do this and this and this and this. Make it still within your area of expertise.
Right.
But there are different products that you can have in your arsenal that can also help with that stability.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Not everybody's going to need a website every single month, but they might need this, they might need that. It's also a great way to sell new things to current clients, right? I bought a web. This is something we ran into a lot. I gave them their website. Now they don't need me for another year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes for the website. So like having something else that you can sell them over time so that they can keep coming back and you can build that long-term relationship. That's really important. That's something I think a lot of people, don't really think about as much. And I think that's definitely, I love that idea though, having something else to sell them, something that's not as expensive as that original thing that you can maybe every couple of months throw something their way, or, something like you do really well is, this idea of a newsletter, right? So like sending out a newsletter, there's valuable little nuggets in there. that's the kind of thing too that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about is like maybe there's a subscription there. Maybe there's some service that you can provide that is not necessarily your core thing, but it's the knowledge that you've gained, about the thing that you're doing. And so you could do the work, but then you can also share it with other people. And even if you're a junior designer, there's probably things that that you could sell, right? That I think are something a lot of people don't necessarily think about. And I talked with Tommy Gioco not long ago, and this was something he thought about, and he does quite a bit, selling ebooks and actual digital products, which are a little different, I think, than you're talking about. But, we talk a lot about career transitioners and career shifters coming from another job into this and into UX design or design in general. There's a lot of experience there that you've built up over the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because you're a new junior designer doesn't mean you don't have experience in other things. There's probably something that you could do to market yourself, sell ideas, sell thoughts, sell a course, whatever it is, newsletter like you're talking about, and sell that on top of the service piece that you're doing, building websites, building audits, things like that. Is that something you ever thought about? I mean, you're clearly, I guess, thinking about it. You got the newsletter yourself. But is that something
I don't stop thinking about it. No, I absolutely. And the thing when talking about this, the thing that really comes up with me is that especially juniors, designers, or people who are starting out feel like they already need to be able to do everything. And I think with productization, that really is a big chance to escape that, because at the end of the day, a company isn't looking for one person who will do everything for them. With a UX design background, user research has always been one of the topics dear to my heart, but it's not for every type of company. But when I think about companies who want to do user research, but their designers don't have the time for it, or they don't know how to set it up, I feel at this point in time there's a big opportunity in the market for someone to actually approach companies with an e-commerce platform or an app or something in the digital space and simply saying, hey, how would you feel if I every month would interview 5 of your stakeholders and simply come back with you with interesting insights from those interviews?
I love it.
Do 5 interviews a month, maybe 4, 1 each week, but 5 is always a nice number. Thanks to the Norman Nielsen group, 5 is always right. So you'll do 5 interviews every month, where it'll take you, let's say, 5 hours for the interview, 10 hours for putting it all together, presenting it, busy work, whatnot. So you're working 15 hours a month. You can easily charge between 5 and 10K per client for 15 hours a month. It's something that's very valuable to them and something that they're not able to figure out by themselves at this point. If you can turn that into annual subscriptions, for example, I think you're sitting on a gold mine.
Yeah, and I love that, because this is, again, we're thinking more or less about UX design or something that a UX designer, and now we're thinking more in terms of just problem solving, UX research. This is something a UX researcher could do on the side, right? These are all these are brilliant advice. I love the idea. There has to be, maybe this is an opportunity for you to sell something, a repository of ideas. Subscribe to this thing and you could get all these little nuggets, these little chunks of ideas that someone's thought of, and you could, for a low fee of $10 a month or something. I don't know. But yeah, that sounds like an opportunity there, Philip. Maybe you should look into that.
If this is the moment for me to do a little plug, it is really about something that's close to your heart. And even though if there would be a list of maybe 50 ideas of digital products, I think it's very important that it's something that works for you. So, of course, I also have something to sell, which is a productizer session. There is, of course, an entire program where I help people from A to Z. But a productizer session is a session of 2.5 hours in which I talk about who you are as a person, what your skills are, what type of industry you find interesting or speaks to you, but also what have you done in the past, what skills do you have. And with all that information in 2.5 hours, I actually present to you saying, hey, within these industries and your personality type, because yes, there's also a personality test.
Yeah.
These would be problems that would be interesting for you to build a product around. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe that we shouldn't fall in love with the product that we're selling, but with the problem we're solving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is a great starting point to, if you want to get into productization, that's the place to start.
Finding the problem and solving that. And yeah, and the interesting thing about that idea, or the great thing about that idea, is that you aren't limiting yourself to one product, right? You've got that problem space, and there's a million ways to skin the cat. There's a bunch of different things you can offer that would solve that problem. And you could sunset a product if you find it's not working, but you could continue, to come up with some other idea as long as it's solving that problem, or adjacent problems, because there's always adjacent problems that kind of feed into that one problem, deeper problems, higher level problems, all those like different ways to do it. I love that idea. That's a great call out.
Yeah. And one of the fears that people also have when it comes to productization is the idea that they'll be doing one thing for the rest of their life, which definitely is not the case. Like you said, you can always come up with different products, but your productized service could also be your kickoff product, your intake, your audit, your discovery phase. You could productize that and use that to land new clients, and then take them wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing too, I was just thinking about, and maybe this is something I love your thoughts on this. It's not that you're saying necessarily that you have to only do this. You could always do the service type. Maybe don't charge per the hour, but some other kind of custom non-product service offering along with this, right? So it's not to say you have to do one or the other. There's certainly an opportunity for you to do both, to kind of distribute your income so that you're not relying on one income stream going forward, because that's maybe the hardest part of being a freelancer, is the income stream. At least for me it was. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
We all have different challenges, but quite often the people who are freelancers, they are the experts. They are really good at designing, at writing. They do something really well, and they know that there's an opportunity for them to make the most out of that. But being a freelancer really means also being a one-man band. You need to be the CEO, you need to know how finances work, you need to know how to sell, how to market. These are all different things that you need to be able to do. And everyone has their own challenge there. Some even struggle with mastering their craft, or some are really good at sales but don't have something to sell. So that's really personal, but it's important to at least be aware of your own strengths and weaknesses and figure out how to tackle them.
Yeah, I love that. So part of your it sounds like you mentioned doing a personality test with your program. It almost sounds like part of it is sort of like not a psychotherapy session almost. You have to understand them a little bit to understand what they're good at, because the last thing you want to do, I think, is do something that's going to work against you. Right?
Oh, definitely.
Like, if you don't want to start an idea or start a business around a thing that you hate or that you just don't like doing, or, it has to be something you enjoy, something you're obviously good at, something that, you're less likely to get burnt out on if you were to do this full time. So I think that's something, something you're really passionate about, obviously. So it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that. A lot of people just think like, oh, I freelance, I have to go do websites, or I freelance, I have to go do logos or whatever.
Yeah.
But find something you're passionate about, something you're good at, something that fits you.
Yeah, and quite often people find that their own personality. So for example, when someone's an introvert, they think it's a weakness, but it's not. It's just a different side of spectrum, of course, is a very poor word to use here. But if you're someone who really enjoys sitting somewhere in a quiet place, having a Red Bull and eating pizza, and you don't want to be disturbed and don't like presenting and being the center of attention, there are perfect things for you to do. If you really enjoy working on design systems, for example, that's something you can definitely pick up. If you're an extrovert and you get a lot of energy from being that center of attention and being around people, why don't you go to digital agencies and present about different topics? That might also be your product. So it is important to know who you are and also what you like and what you don't like, because your solution, your product, and the problem that you're solving, it should all make sense. If it doesn't make sense, you're forcing something that's not really you, that isn't working for you.
Yeah. All right. So we talked a lot about the benefits. Obviously, there's a ton of benefits. Any drawbacks that you've seen from doing it this way that people should be aware of? As they think about doing this, what are some pitfalls to avoid, or things that maybe you've run into, some negatives to this perhaps that just are maybe unavoidable? Anything like that? Any cons to this?
Well, I think it would more be risks, to be honest.
Risks, okay.
We're all in. There's a saying in Dutch for it, but can you help me out in the English part? What would you call someone who's like really excited and who knows everything about their work and their skills? They're like super focused on that one thing.
Like phrase for that? I don't know if we have something.
Or a term.
Like someone's really gung ho. Maybe they're like gung ho about it.
Yeah, I guess that would work. So in that case, when you have an idea, you immediately are super excited about it, right? When I have an idea, I think, oh, this is the best idea in the world. There's absolutely no downside to it. 100% certainty. Let's go. So we don't really do our due diligence. And I think that would be the biggest risk. So if you are considering building a product or productized service, at least, it's very important to have a very clear understanding of, first, who are you helping? Like, who is your target audience? What industry? But be very clear on the problem that you're solving.
Yeah.
Because no matter how shiny your product is, people only care about solving their own problem. So you need to have certainty about the problem that you're solving, but also have a fair or a decent amount of certainty if people will believe that you are the person with your product to solve that problem. So validating that is an absolute must. So that would be the big risk. Don't think you have found the golden egg. Invest a lot of time in it, like record this full video course that will take you half a year to build, then launch it, and then there's crickets.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is a lot of like our sort of standard UX process almost, right? Like come up with an idea, spend some time validating it, thinking about, well, obviously do your research and your discovery first, right? Find out if that is a problem, and then figure out what that solution looks like. But MVP, what is that minimum viable thing? Not the minimum, but what is the minimum viable thing? And figure out what that looks like, test it, prototype it. Maybe you offer it for free to get feedback or testimonials or something for a little while. And then once you have that social proof, that validation, then you can take it and then you can always expand it. And the other beautiful thing about this is, you're not making you're not making a physical product. It's not like you have to go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and manufacture 1,000 t-shirts, and if that t-shirt's wrong, you're out.
No.
You can iterate, and it's software. It's soft. The whole process is soft. You can change it over time. So, don't be afraid to flex, right? I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing you say is, you can always iterate, improve it over time.
And you should. That's the beauty of it. And at this point, you also mentioned testimonials briefly, but also getting feedback. It's such an important step. And from all that I'm noticing is that whenever you can even automate it, of course. Please do include like a nice personal video, but still make sure that you're actively searching for that feedback or gathering testimonials, because those will definitely help you along the way.
Yeah, and speaking of automation, you just posted something on LinkedIn. By the way, anybody out there who has not followed Philip on LinkedIn, please go find him on LinkedIn. A lot of you post almost daily, pretty often. Really great insights into all the stuff that we're talking about today. He's got a newsletter and stuff in there as well. But you just posted something recently, maybe today, yesterday, I can't remember when it was, but about automating. And when I think about all of this, like the thing that I think about is the more you sell, right, the harder it becomes to do a lot of that other hands-on kind of personal stuff that a lot of clients might actually want. But, if you automate certain things, it gives you more time to free up to do that personalized kind of approach, right? Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's maybe something to think about. It's obviously on your mind because you just posted about it, but that automation piece and actually enabling you to do the other work so that you don't have to do the boring, mundane, monotonous stuff over and over and over again every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. It all has to do with scalability. Building a business that can scale. Right. One of the fun questions that I would like to take with us today would be, if you would sign 10 clients tomorrow, would your business break?
Right. Could you actually do it? Yeah.
So it's also about capacity, meaning if you are currently up and running, and I hope you are, if you're getting started, that's perfectly fine. But if you're up and running, there might be a moment where you can say, I'm fully booked. A new client comes knocking on my door, but I don't have the capacity. I have to turn them away. Or you would have to say, you'll need to wait for 4 weeks. Then I think a project could be done. So I have a spot for you in 4 weeks. And then hoping that the client has that time to wait. Or you can do something that will land you into a burnout and say, yeah, sure, I'll solve it and work day and night. And all of those options are really shit. You don't want any of that.
Yeah.
So if you agree on that part, what would be the solution? And that is actually to reduce the amount of time your service, solution, or product takes from you. And there's this really nifty model, which has come down to a do it done for you service, which would be you hiring me as a freelancer, and I work 40 hours and I bill 40 hours. I'm doing all the work for you. On the other end of the spectrum, it is a do it yourself. Buy my video course. Don't call me. Don't mail me. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper,
Right.
but it's totally free from my hours. It doesn't take up any time.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And, you mentioned scalability. I think that's like the big thing that we run into often with this hourly charging by the hours. You mentioned only work 40 hours a week or 30, 50, whatever, hopefully not more than 60, hopefully not more than 40. But, how do you make it scalable? If I were to onboard 10 clients next week, how might I keep them? How might I not have to turn them away? Yeah.
How would you currently onboard your clients? Give me an example.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to do this? You want me to actually tell you?
Throw something out
Jesus
there.
Christ. Yeah, so
We
if
do it
I were
together.
doing this now, if I were doing this now, it would be a lot of manual, going through, copying my contract in. We used to use InDesign to do the contract because we were a design agency, made them look pretty. So I would copy the InDesign file. I would do a find and replace, change all the names, change all the names of the people, the address. I would change the service and copy and paste. Look at the last thing, do all that stuff. I would send them the invoice manually via email. I would, store it on my shared drive. I'd have to manually store all these things. I would physically send them an invoice or have to manually type out the invoice and email that to them. I would have to cash the checks, because back in the day, this was 15 years ago, we didn't have like all this fancy stuff and
Did
pay
you have
online.
to send a pigeon as well? And
yeah, I had carrier
horse and
pigeon. I had to tie it to
carriage.
their, yeah, exactly. They'd have to fold the check into a paper airplane and throw it back to me. Is how we used to get.
You had to go into the bank, and the bank would go.
You know what's
shunk,
funny, dude?
shunk.
This was 15 years ago, and we had this really crappy little regional bank that didn't even allow us to deposit checks through an app. I don't even think they had an app then. They had a website. So I knew my banker, man. We had I had a personal relationship.
Okay,
But,
let's imagine that people are still tuned in and did not leave us on that horrible story.
Thanks.
No. Give you an example. So I don't know exactly when this will air, but very, very soon, and it might already be up and running when you hear this. You'll have to check my LinkedIn. I'm doing a very small action a small campaign helping 4 freelancers through the productizer session for a reduced price.
Okay.
I'm doing that very small scale because I really want to go slow for now, gather as much feedback, keep going, yada, yada, yada. The way it works is that first I say, hey, if you're interested in this, I want you to schedule a call with me. There's a Calendly link here. My agenda is up to date. Pick a time that works for you. That doesn't require any effort from my end. When someone books that call, they, through Zapier, go into my CRM, meaning their name, their email, the stuff will be collected. And I actually have some sort of a sales funnel overview where I can see like, hey, you have a call now with this person. First nice. It was a lead, but now that they've scheduled a call, they're actually in the next phase. When they actually are qualified in that call saying, well, hey, you know what? I think you have the potential. You're in a place where you can actually productize your service. They would say, okay, I want to actually purchase the productizer session. They go to my Webflow website. There's a product page with a Stripe checkout. And once they complete that Stripe checkout, a lot of things happen. They, in my case, go to a community website where the course actually is. And the course sounds very hefty, but it's just an introduction video. It says, hey, the first step is watch this video, take this personality test, fill in this type form. Once you've done this, you can actually schedule the 2.5-hour session. The only thing that I need to do is before the session, see what they filled in, prepare a lot of the information. So I do a little bit of secret behind the curtains research to come prepared for that session.
We're not going to call it stalking, but yeah.
No.
Research,
my due diligence. My due diligence.
There you go.
But I actually come super prepared to the meeting, and normally this entire thing would take me up to anywhere between 4 to 6 hours. But now I have a bit of preparation and that 2.5 hour. So the more time I'm able to reduce that it would take from me as a person, once again, my capacity go up. I can do more of these sessions because they require less time.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a far cry from how we used to do it, and I love that. That's something that I think also too. Like again, I just keep thinking about this idea of scaling. Like the whole point of this is, to figure out how you can make more money by doing less work, or standardizing some of it or automating some of it, and then you're allowed to do the stuff that you really enjoy doing, and you don't have to do all the tax. One thing, I don't know if you guys have to do this in Europe, but the taxes in the States is goddamn miserable, dude. It is miserable. The way you have to file taxes. I
don't do taxes, but that's a bad idea.
Yeah, the way you have
we
to
have them as well.
Yeah, well, I knew you had, but it's streamlined. It's a simpler process, I think. Like there's a percentage versus like all these. I have to million forms. Maybe it's different for businesses. I don't know, but in the States, there's like all these forms you have to fill out. In each state has their own sales tax that you have to submit every month. You have to submit your numbers, or you end up losing your business license if you don't fill it. It's just like, God, the taxes and stuff for me was just like the worst part, man. It was like the first thing we actually outsourced. We hired a bookkeeper to do that, like a bookkeeping service. But that's actually something too to think about, like for freelancers is, this is different from your productizing advice, obviously, but just if I could give some freelancers some general advice is to, don't be afraid to outsource what you don't enjoy doing.
Definitely.
If you don't enjoy the bookkeeping, find somebody to do it. And that way you can focus on the things that you actually enjoy so that you don't get burnt out. So anyway, a little lanyard there for everybody out there.
On that topic, outsourcing is definitely within the lane. The idea to build a scalable business you can do in a couple of ways. You can scale your business by hiring people, which in a way is almost the same as outsourcing work, but you're hiring people to do the work for you. The other way is by automation and documentation. So instead of having to write every email from the start, you have these on the shelf as well. So they're definitely in the same lane. It all comes down to reducing the time it takes you to deliver your service.
Okay. All right. I love that, man. Yeah, that's such a great advice too, is, thinking about the spectrum of everything totally manual, everything totally automated. Find the happy medium for you, because it might look different depending. Some people might want more automation and just selling stuff digitally and they never want to touch it. Some people might want to do the hands-on stuff, but just think out how to streamline that. There's some spectrum that works for you, some level of whatever you want to call it. I don't know the word. So, all right, cool, man. Well, so we talked quite a bit about all this stuff. Before we get out of here, I'd love to hear some final words of advice, tips, tricks, something to leave our listeners off with. If you're thinking about productizing, the big key takeaways, things that you want them to remember.
For me, I found this out way too late. I've been going at it for a very long time, over 18 years now. And this took me a very long time to come up with. And I'm not the brightest bulb on the chandelier, I would say. But I'm a person who really just goes at it and keeps grinding at it. If it doesn't work, I need to work harder and faster. The moment I realized that it's actually worth working together with people who know a lot about these things, that was an absolute eye-opener. So I'm not saying give me a call, but talk to people who know you. Get some perspective on what it is that you're doing and how other people feel about that. Make sure that you know who you're helping, what problem you're solving, and what makes you unique from your competitors. I think that would be half the battle. And I would probably be able to go on about this topic for a couple of hours, but I hope to keep it as condensed as possible.
Yeah, I love it. Cool, man. That's really great advice, though. I think talking to people who know you, they're going to be giving you the most contextually accurate advice. And just talking to some random person on the internet who doesn't know you, you're doing your due diligence, obviously, but like it's other random people on the internet who don't have any idea who you are.
Don't talk to your mom. I mean,
Watch
people
that don't
who
talk to
do
your mom.
have some, some business people who are in the business, customers, clients, business partners.
I don't know what kind of advice moms give now, but when I grew up in the 80s, so computers were still a relatively new thing, and the advice was always, get a job in computers, that's where you're going to make all your money, in the computers. So,
you're doing great, hon.
Oh, yeah, I love you so much, honey. So don't talk to your mom. She's not going to give you very good business advice, unless your mom happens to be an entrepreneur. And is very good with business. If your mom's a CEO, get advice from your mom. Otherwise, don't get advice from your mom.
Yeah, or if your mom doesn't love you, she'll also be very honest with you. And
that's true. If your mom doesn't love you, maybe she is first. Hopefully, you're not.
If she gives you great advice, you have another problem.
Watch out. This is not a psychology. This is not a psychology podcast, there, Philip. This is all right. Cool, man. So I've got a few questions that I like to ask all of my guests. Do you have some time to stick around to answer some questions to help all the listeners out there get to know Philip a little bit better? You got some time? You ready
Absolutely.
for this? All right. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
My favorite non-design book. I'm a very poor reader, and when I read, they are quite often business books. So if it would not be a design book, I would highly recommend The One Thing.
Okay.
I treated myself to a lovely burnout, this was one of the books that I took with me. I actually brought two books with me. One was the Design Sprint book, which I guess is a design-related book. And The One Thing was my second book, which is very poor to bring as a second book, of course. But it's really valuable in the way that it really helps you to realize how important it is to focus on one thing.
Hence the name of the book. That's a clever title.
Yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler, the title, but yeah, especially if you're running a business, you can be quite overwhelmed by all the opportunities that you have.
That's a good point, yeah.
Getting some focus is really important.
I love it. All right. What is your favorite non-design podcast? Your favorite podcast not Beyond UX Design?
Yeah, exactly. Besides this one, I'm not the biggest podcast nerd, but I do love comedy, stand-up. So Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer.
Okay. All right.
Oh, man. Probably Chappelle, who is an absolute genius.
Dude. Hell
but
yeah.
From a podcast level, Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer, I mean, whenever I have a long car drive, they really crack me up and help me getting there.
I love it, man. Yeah. Well, hopefully you're not driving 2 hours each way for work much these days.
No,
that's a long commute, man. Oh my God. Is that what you're driving, or were you like on a train for 2 hours when you were commuting?
Oh no, it was worse. It was a train and a metro in Amsterdam, and going on my bike to the train station, and it was door to door, I have to say.
Yeah, good Lord. Yeah, that's a long commute, man. 2 hours. That's 4 hours a day. 20 hours a week just in commuting, man. Ooh, man, that's rough.
Yeah, when your commute is a part-time job, you're doing something wrong.
What you need to do is figure out how to make money every hour you're commuting. That would have been a good side gig.
You get a lot of time to think.
And you think it's funny because you would imagine companies wouldn't want you to do that. Like they just feel like, if I give them so much time to think, they're going to figure this out. They're not going to All right. What is your favorite meal? And this could be something you've cooked. It could be something your grandma used to cook, something that you've eaten at a restaurant, anything.
Sushi has a very special place in my heart because I was always a huge sushi dork. But actually, my fiance and I are a Tinder match. Yes, kids, that's how we roll. Right 2023. And we had a very lovely conversation. And at some point, I asked her, "Do you like sushi?" She said, "Yeah, I love sushi." I said, "Oh, I love sushi too. Shall we go out for sushi? If it doesn't work out, at least we had sushi." And besides all the sushi, we now also have a lovely 2.5-year-old son, and we're engaged. So things are going well, thanks to sushi.
Yeah. All because of the sushi. There you go. So sushi, not only it's good, but it has a special place in your heart. I love it. What is your favorite vacation spot? It's always so jealous, Europeans. I hate asking them this because it makes me feel so, stuck over here in the States. But
there's
have so many cool places to go.
A lovely sunny island called Curacao, which is one of the ABC islands. So it's Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, which is actually pretty close. It's closer to you than it is to me. It's also where my wife is from.
That's true. Yeah.
It's
oh really? Oh wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's an amazing holiday destination. If it wasn't for the 11-hour flight, it would be my number one, but I would probably have to go with Greece because it's a 3 or 4 hour flight. It's a really nice island, and it's a little bit less hot. Curacao can be a bit too hot for me.
Yeah, it's very hot down there. Yeah, man, that's I live in Kentucky now, which is almost Canada. I live basically the northern tip of Kentucky, very southern tip of Ohio. So we're pretty damn close to Canada. So we're pretty far north. So even flying down to the Caribbean is not really that close because even from where I live, there's layovers and multiple stops, and it's an all day affair. I used to live down in New Orleans, though. And
it's a 7.5 hour flight from your end.
No, not much better. I know, dude. We lived in New Orleans, and we were a 45-minute nonstop flight to Cozumel, dude. That was nice. That was really nice. We didn't do it very often, but we did it once. I had to say often. We only did it once.
It's a nice way to spend the holiday.
Nonstop. I know, man. Yeah, it's great. But anyway, that's I don't live there anymore, so now it takes about 7 hours to get down there too. Living in the Midwest is fun. All right, what is your favorite design tool that is not Figma? It's hard to answer.
This will be the end of the podcast, right? Not the beginning, because I'm very close to saying Canva, and I know it's it might be the scariest thing to say for designers. No, I'm a huge tool nerd. I do use Canva because it's just really fast for your socials, and Figma can be a bit too much for that. But there's a presentation tool called Pitch, which is amazing, but I replaced that with Canva, save a bit of the subscription bill. I'm very much into video, creating video content, so I use Tela, which is also really nice for screen recording. You can output in different ratios, which is nice for all the different platforms. And Descript, which is really cool for editing, creating those fancy. So if I would have to name one, I'll say Tela.
All right, yeah. I haven't used Descript. I don't really do much video stuff, and to be honest, for me, I don't know. I don't have a very fast computer. I don't have a good camera, so I don't know. You got it now. You look really nice. You look very sharp. We've talked about this a little bit. You got some nice camera equipment going on over there. I got this.
But
really
I also have a great face for radio and
podcast,
podcasts, so I need to invest in some hefty video equipment to make this all happen.
Get out of here. You look great. You look very handsome. All right, Philip. Well, cool, man. Well, before we get out of here, tell us where we can find you. Give all your stuff a plug. Let everybody know where they can find out more about your productizer course and all that stuff. Give yourself a plug.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So my last name is really Dutch, so I will try to avoid you from that one. If you want to visit my website, you can do so at Philip. Of course, NL is for the Netherlands. It'll forward you to the correct site. From there, you can easily connect with me on LinkedIn, and that's where I'm most active. So feel free to follow me, send me a message, connect with me. And if you have any questions, I'd love to hear.
There you go. And just for all the Americans out there, that's Philip with one L, not two. We spell it differently over here.
You.
So if you go PHILIP.NL, not Philip with two L's. You should buy Philip with two L's.NL just to have it go. I don't know how much that costs, but anyway, all right, Philip, awesome, man. So you've got the productizer stuff, you've got all the course, you've got the newsletter, you post all the time on LinkedIn. So everybody listening out there, please follow Philip. He drops nuggets daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Great dude. And by the way, you know what? I also want to give you a shout out to your little your Bitmoji or your little characters, your illustrations with the golden toilet and the $100 bill toilet paper. That just cracks me up, man. I love that stuff.
Beautiful visuals, absolutely.
Yeah. Not only is he a brilliant marketing and content creator, he's got a little bit of humor in him too. So. Philip, I love that stuff. So, Philip, thank you so much for joining, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for coming on. Your insights are awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.